Welcome to Stoke-on-Trent 100 Voices of the City, which is a collaborative project between Stoke-on-Trent City Council, University of Staffordshire and Cross Rhythms Radio. To mark Stoke-on-Trent's centenary year, we are speaking to some incredible, awesome people who are connected to Stoke-on-Trent. All sorts of different people, different backgrounds, some of them based in the city, some of them off around the world doing incredible things. Each of them has a different story to tell. We're talking to them a little bit about themselves, but also we're asking them some questions about the city and their connection to the city. I'm going to hand you over to today's guests so that they can introduce themselves.
Hello there, my name's Clare. I have the pleasure of working in the city since 2018. So I currently work as the Artistic Director and Chief Executive of the British Ceramics Biennial, which is much more commonly known as BCB. But I originally came to Stoke-on-Trent to do a different job as Chief Executive of a charity called Reform Heritage, which is based within and looks after Middleport Pottery and other heritage sites around the city.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about BCB and what it does?
Sure. So BCB is an arts organisation, and in short, we bring together contemporary artists and clay. And through that combination, do all sorts of things. So our sort of mission statement is making change through clay. So it's very much about through clay. This isn't about potters making pots, although sometimes it might be. It's about all sorts of programmes. So we work through a lot of community partnerships, doing year-round programmes. Mm-hmm. So we'll be in schools. We do one with Potteries Museum and Art Gallery. We have a brilliant collaboration with Stoke Recovery Service. So we have all of these year-round things that happen in and around Stoke-on-Trent. But we also have the absolute privilege of delivering the British Ceramics Biennial. So that is the UK's largest contemporary ceramics event happening. It's a biennial happening every 2 years. So our next one is on the horizon, is autumn 2025. So incredible, really brilliant that we're aligning with the centenary year. So it's a really wonderful opportunity. So if it's to do with clay, we're interested, we're there, and we're excited by it. That's what I would say. And
the event that will happen, obviously in the centenary year, that attracts people from all around the UK, all around the world, doesn't it? It's very high profile.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really feel that is a complete privilege that I've got this opportunity to lead that event in this city. I do sometimes go, I'm not from this city originally. Are you sure you want me to have this job? But it's so wonderful. Mm-hmm. So it's the UK's sort of biggest profile, highest profile, longest running event of its kind. And it is attracting people from throughout the country and throughout the world. So our visitor profile, won't go in too far into the detail, but about 48% of them are local.
Yes.
To the city. And then about 50% are national, and about 2% who are travelling internationally to come to Stoke-on-Trent specifically for the biennial.
Incredible.
And we're showing the work of artists. So, I describe what we do as working locally, nationally and internationally. So we will have sort of local representation within there. So, for example, the Staffordshire University students often have a showcase within the biennial.
Yes.
We'll also have national representation. So we'll show, some of the best contemporary artists working with clay will be shown in Stoke-on-Trent. That's so important to me. And then we'll have some international collaborations as well. So in 2025, we have one with Portugal and we've got one with Poland. So it's so exciting. I just love just the variety of it. And what's wonderful for me is probably nearly every day I'll be having a conversation with somebody who goes, I love the biennial. It's like a marker in my life. Yes. Of every 2 years I come to Stoke-on-Trent, or I make sure that we make the time and we bring the family and we engage with clay in this really sort of in-depth, exploratory, innovative and exciting way.
I think perhaps a lot of people know about the event, but they don't realise the incredible work you're doing in between.
No.
All that work with community groups and children and hard to reach groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was when I first, this job became available and I was umming and ahhing and do I want to do this? I have a job I love. do I? And anyway, I've now had the privilege of having 2 jobs that I love. I knew the biennial. I loved the biennial. I was one of those people that was like, yeah, I go to this every 2 years. The thing I didn't really realise about BCB was the strength and the quality of those programmes, and also what they were doing in the city. Because those programmes specifically say, right, we're going to look at the data, the evidence in the city, look at what the needs are, and then we're going to try and work out whether we can bring something to that. So, for example, the programme that swung it for me to apply for this job is called Recast, and it's a collaboration between BCB and Stoke Recovery Service.
Yes.
Stoke Recovery Service are doing the addiction recovery support in the city. They're based just around the corner from where we are now. And so what we did is we brought together our expertise in working with clay and working with people, and Stoke Recovery Services expertise in addiction recovery. So they're predominantly doing drug and alcohol addiction recovery, and created this programme. We've been running it since 2018, and it is specifically targeted at supporting people around what needs to happen in a addiction recovery programme. So sort of principles around self-care and managing adversity and stress and strain, because it's those things in someone's life, if they can manage those better, then they are less likely to relapse. So it's looking at those, and if there is a point at which you need to really apply care and attention, and things can go stressfully, horribly wrong quite quickly, it's working with clay.
Yes.
Because, you'll be happily getting on with it, and the thing will get too wet and it will collapse, or the thing will get too dry and it will crumble, or you'll accidentally have got an air hole in it.
So it requires complete focus.
Really?
Yeah.
So we were like, hang on a second, there is something here about the care and the focus that is needed to work with clay and be successful working with clay.
Yes.
Aligns with the care and the focus that is needed to successfully go through an addiction recovery process. So once that was sort of identified, we were able to develop this programme. So we're bringing our clay expertise, and Stoke Recovery Service are bringing their addiction recovery expertise. They'll have a support worker who is in every session with us, so they can make those sort of comparisons and alignments with the recovery process. And anyway, I was thinking about applying for this job. I happened to hear a podcast that was a podcast with 2 of the participants who had been on this programme. And I was sitting at home going, okay, I have no choice but to apply for this job because, my goodness, it's important. It's important in this city. So that's just one example, because there is a higher incidence of drug and alcohol addiction in this city, and we can bring something to that. It's a relatively small part of a whole load of collaborations and partnerships and a whole load of expertise that comes in from all manner of places. But we can bring something. We've got something to give here. And likewise, we'll do that in schools in different ways. We'll do that, like I say, we do a programme with the museum.
Yes.
We're doing one at the moment where we're looking at the heritage skills within the city. And we're looking at slip decorated wares. And if people go into the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery on the top floor in the wonderful ceramics collection, you'll see this beautiful display of slip decorated chargers and plates by Thomas Toft. And we were like, this is great. Let's think about that as a starting point and how we can apply that to contemporary practice and people's lives. So we're doing that at the moment. We're working with, as you say, sort of harder to reach, potentially disenfranchised people within the city.
Yes.
So we're working with a group of English as a second language learners from Stoke-on-Trent College. We're working with Amity Hub, who support young unaccompanied refugee and asylum seekers in the area. So all sorts of collaborations and partnerships.
I had the pleasure of meeting some members of the LGBTQ plus community who were having a group with you as well. They were fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with them for a while, actually. And we did one of our biggest collaborations we've done with that group was a project called Stoke Makes Plates, which wasn't intended to, but actually when it happened, it fell during lockdown and was one of those things where organisations have to go, okay, about turn, this wasn't what we were expecting, but how can we do it? So a lot of that programme actually ended up getting delivered remotely with pizza boxes of all the materials left on people's doorsteps. And then they joined remote sessions so that they could make these plates and learn about plate making within the city, but also use that as a sort of vehicle for their own messages.
Yes.
So actually that project and the older LGBTQ group were a big part of that. That project became really important to people because for a lot of people involved with that, that was their one weekly point of contact with the rest of the world or beyond their immediate circle of family and contacts at a time when that was the most necessary thing. So it was incredibly moving to see how people responded to that project. I won't tell you some of the messages because I'll end up in tears. But to sort of have that privilege to be that important in people's lives at certain points is just wonderful.
Changing lives with clay.
Yeah, exactly. Making change.
So let's dive into some Stoke-on-Trent questions. So this will be really interesting because you're not originally from Stoke-on-Trent. You're an honorary Stokey. So what do you think makes a Stokey?
I think it is as simple as somebody who has a affiliation and passion for the city. So I don't think you have to be from here. I have absolutely self-nominated myself as a Stokey, and I did it. So I came to do that role with Reform Heritage in May 2018. And within 3 months of me starting that role, May, June, July, August, yes, that's right, August 2018, Middleport Pottery, which is the main site that Reform Heritage runs within the city at the moment, Middleport Pottery was hosting the Poppy's Weeping Window. Yes. And so I came into the role and everyone went, oh, by the way, in 3 months' time, the whole of Stoke-on-Trent's going to turn up, are they? So people will probably remember, or lots of people I'm sure from the city will remember, that incredible Poppy's installation that was installed down the bottle oven at Middleport. And, thousands of people came onto the site to see that over the time that it was there, but also thousands more viewed it from the towpath on the other side of the canal. So suddenly I was sort of leading this thing that the city was really engaging with extremely strongly. And what was quite interesting is, with these things, you have a formal launch and all the stakeholders and the partners and all the people turn up. So we were doing this and I had the pleasure of clearly welcoming everyone and opening it. And somebody came to me afterwards and like, Claire, you were incredibly passionate. Next time, possibly don't bang on the lectern because that comes straight through the mic. But they were like, it was kind of lovely because you were banging on the lectern because you were talking about how important Stoke-on-Trent was. And they were like, that's quite incredible for someone who's been here 3 months. So I got the bug really quickly.
Yes.
So that's all I think it is. It's about that sort of, I think, somebody who feels a very strong affiliation with the city.
Do you think Stoke-on-Trent draws you in? Once you're here, once you're connected to people in the city, it's hard to leave, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah, I absolutely think it is. But for me, it's about that generations of skill, hand-making skill, the thing that I really value and, quite good at to some degree. And then you look at people in Stoke-on-Trent and go, well, I'm never going to be anything like that, no matter how hard I try. I think that's just an incredible thing. And that is so prevalent in Stoke-on-Trent that's the thing that really
people
spoke to me.
People are so humble, though, aren't they? They don't realise. They don't realise that the skill that's involved in that. It's just what my nan did.
That's what I do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And isn't there something incredible about that? Sort of just the real integrity of that. This is how we live. This is what we do.
Yes.
For me, it's about somebody who really responds strongly and positively to the city rather than where you were born.
And perhaps it takes someone from outside to come in and say, actually, that's remarkable, to actually sort of notice and to remind people how very special that is.
Yes, maybe. I'm a bit careful about that because I suppose it's very easy for someone like me to come in and go, that is remarkable, that's absolutely right. But actually with a certain naivety of not knowing all of the difficulties of that.
Sure.
Hundreds of years of jobs in the pots, which were not always pleasant jobs to have,
yes.
well-paid jobs to have, or healthy jobs to have. So actually, I am a bit careful about that, because you don't want to be the naive person who's come in with the rose-tinted glasses about, isn't this all marvellous? Yes, there is something utterly remarkable about this place, but there's a care that's needed about really understanding it.
Yes.
So I am just a bit reticent about doing
Absolutely. What do you think the best thing is about Stoke-on-Trent?
Variety. I think that's partly the sort of polycentric city thing and the 6 towns. But I mean it in a really practical way. I love the variety of the city. I love that if I want, I don't know, something powder coated, mm-hmm. I know that person is in Stoke-on-Trent who can do it. Mm-hmm. I know that if I want, I can't think of another example, but certain slightly odd, slightly probably difficult to find expertise and services, they're probably somewhere in Stoke-on-Trent. I love that variety. I love the variety of the built environment. Mm-hmm. Now, unlike many, I'm a bit of a sucker for modernist architecture.
Okay.
So I really love the Hanley BT Tower. I absolutely love the Radio Stoke building.
Okay.
I think there are many who do not. There's lots of buildings in Stoke-on-Trent of that sort of era that I absolutely love. But what I particularly enjoy about them is that I can stand at one of them and I can turn around and see, in the case of the BT Hanley Tower, I can turn around and have a look at the telephone exchange, like literally round the corner.
Yes.
And that juxtaposition of that built environment is just incredible. I really enjoy that. And so it is that thing. It's about the sort of variety of the businesses, of the places, of the architecture. And I suppose for somebody who's led by visuals and what things look like, gosh, it couldn't be richer. It's
Absolutely.
brilliant.
There's a fine line between brutalist architecture and ugly buildings, do you think?
I'm a lover of an ugly building.
Okay. That's fabulous. So is there anything in particular that you most admire about this part of the world?
I think it's probably a kind of resilience.
Okay.
And it sort of goes back to that point about having to, suppose, be a bit careful, because resilience is not necessarily a good thing because it is born out of having to manage a circumstance that isn't very positive. But that willingness and that determination and that sort of spirit to, oh, come on, let's move on, is something I really admire. So I think it would be that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And now, if you have people visiting from out of the area, which you obviously do a lot with the BCB, where do you take them? Obviously, other than to the BCB.
Yeah, obviously, that's where we start.
Yes.
Places, where do I take them? I take them to Middleport Pottery.
Okay.
Mainly because I've got the knowledge.
Yes.
I can feel very comfortable going, and this, and this, and this. So I do take them there. I go to the incredible collections. I go to the surprising things. So I go to the V&A Wedgwood collection. Yes. Because when you go around that corner and you start like walking through the history, and it feels like a sort of museum experience that people might recognise, and then you go around the corner to the sort of glazed cabinets and then go, wow, this is a incredible visual extravaganza. And yes, I can walk through and I can work it out in chronological order, or I can just enjoy the look at that thing there, look at that thing there, look at that thing. And I revel in that. Do you find you still find new things yourself? Oh, yeah. Yeah. All the time. So those are the sort of places that I take people. But also, I suppose you use the city as a bouncing off point for going to other places as well. I mean, recently, I'm kicking myself that I didn't go sooner. I went to Pugin's Gem, St Giles's church in Cheadle. Yes. And people had told me that I needed to go, and I had driven past the brown signs. Mm-hmm. and never been until, in fact, it was my parents were visiting, and I was like, "Come on, then, now's the time." What an incredible place! I will be taking everybody who I've ever met there again in future. So there is that thing as well about using the city as the sort of the central hub for where are the other places that you go. I mean, the Roaches is the same.
Yes.
So there are those other places that are reachable from the city. But I think what I do is I suppose I try and enthuse people about the thing that really sort of attracts me and continues to sort of retain my attention. And it is that contrast of the architecture and that variety. And I have do I take people here? I don't. I drive this route though. So I have got a favourite view in Stoke-on-Trent.
Okay.
It's quite fleeting. So as you are, it's a Middleport pottery related view. As you are coming down from Burslem, go past the marketplace, and you're going down Newcastle Street, just as you go over the sort of brow of the hill and down, you can see over the rooftops to kind of Middleport with the canal.
Okay.
But more importantly for me, you can see some of the remaining terraces that run perpendicular to the pottery. And it sort of sums up for me what this city must have been like at one point. It really does. The annoying thing about it for me is that you can pretty much see it when you're in a car. It's not so easy to see when you're walking. Or you have to walk down the middle of the road, which obviously is not brilliantly advisable. So I do take people, I do go on journeys, go, oh yeah, no, we've got to do it here, but we're driving home this way so that you can see the 2-second view as we drive down the hill.
I've driven down that so many times, hundreds of times. I don't think I've ever stopped to look at that. So I'm going to have to now. Probably as a passenger though.
I was going to say, do it as a passenger. That's exactly right. If anyone is ever giving me a lift and I engineer them through Burslem, that's why.
I think maybe we should commission an open-top bus or something and take people on that. Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, let's do that. So now, next Stoke-on-Trent question. Can you complete the sentence? Stoke-on-Trent is more than...
Oh.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Is more than you think it is. That's a bit cheesy, isn't it?
No, I like it. It's a jingle. We should record that.
Because I think that's the thing. That's the thing that struck me is when I was sort of moving here to do that job with Reform Heritage. Reform Heritage very much had a sort of national heritage regeneration focus at that time. And I thought I was coming to run a charity that had its scope nationally, but that was based in Stoke-on-Trent. I didn't think terribly long and hard about moving to Stoke-on-Trent. And then I got surprised by it. So I think it's that. I think, and maybe you could probably say that about every place in the country, couldn't you? Maybe. But that is the thing that really struck me, is I was like, oh, actually, this is... I suppose I knew some aspects of the Stoke-on-Trent story. I knew the ceramics aspect of Stoke-on-Trent story, of course I did. But I didn't really get it. But then I did get it really quickly.
Is this whole part of the process of falling in love with the city and not sort of realising how wonderful it is until you're here? I
think, it's partly, maybe for me, it was the surprise. Mm-hmm. Very pleasant, brilliant surprise. So, I think that's it. And I think that the other thing that sort of aligns with that is about the potential.
Yes.
I think this place is brilliant, but I am not immune to seeing the many, many things that we as a city need to address. But there's something quite exciting about that.
Yes.
Because we can make quite an impact quite quickly. And one of the things, you asked me about it, is that, if you come in, are you able to see things a bit differently? Yes, you are. And then I've been here now for a while. I feel very settled here. But I have the privilege that when we put on the biennial and people turn up from all over the country, I get to almost see the city afresh through their eyes again.
Yes.
And last biennial, I got talking to a couple that turned up. They were sort of, we opened the door and they were there. It's like, oh, wow, okay, hello, welcome, come in. And so I got chatting to them. And they had wanted to visit the biennial. They were based in London, but they were actually American, but they were based in London. And it was, last biennial was impacted quite heavily by the train strikes. So they'd wanted to come up. The day they were planning on coming, there'd been a train strike, so they couldn't. So they got, at like 11 o'clock at night from London, a coach, which dropped them off in Hanley at the bus station at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Gosh.
And yes, I did that. I did what an unusual welcome to the city you must have had. And they were like, it was fine. Dropped off at the bus station at 5 o'clock in the morning, walked round the corner to the Hilton Garden Inn. And then they had strolled up. And I found it fascinating because they were obviously very comfortably off. And they had come, they were doing that. They spent the whole day at the biennial. They engaged with some of the artist talks that we were doing. And, I was sort of keeping an eye on them going, they're still here. They've been here now for, 5 hours. So we got chatting and then they were explaining that they were staying for the weekend. That evening they were going to Feasted at Akava to do the chef's table thing. And then they were going to Wedgwood and they were doing all these things in the city. Like, that's quite amazing, really, that actually what the biennial is bringing these people who absolutely value what I value.
Yes.
And they are like, yeah, this is absolutely amazing. Clearly, they didn't have to come to a city that has got its difficulties. And,
yes.
It's not all super pleasant, is it? But to see the city afresh through those sort of experiences, and it's not just those experiences, yes. It happens all the time with local people as well.
Sure.
I mean, Urban Wilderness bring their arts club to the biennial. And those are people from Longton who wouldn't necessarily be your natural people who engage with the arts.
Sure.
And they come and it's fascinating to see what people respond to.
And people don't just come for the biennial as well. They're not just sort of coming up on the train, staying for a few hours, going home again.
They're staying.
Sticking around and eating and exploring and doing other things in the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully going back home and saying how great it was.
Well, so one of the evaluation statistics that I love about the biennial is that we interview people around their perceptions of the city pre them coming on. This is new people.
Yes.
Pre them coming on a visit to the biennial and after they've come. And so we do a measure, and say we, the very expert evaluation people, not me, do this measure of perceptions of the city pre-visit and post-visit. And I won't go into the figures, but for the last 2 biennials, the increase of people's positive perceptions of the city post a biennial visit, which doesn't just mean the biennial, it means, like you say, the restaurants, the experience, the car parks, the hotels, the everything else, is one of the years was 16% and the other year was a 17% increase in a positive perception of the city.
Brilliant.
And it's a figure that I talk to people about all the time of isn't that incredible?
Absolutely.
Engaging people in with high quality content who are coming to the city for the first time completely change their perception of the city.
And they send other people.
They tell people. Yeah, it's nothing more powerful than word of mouth, is
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the next section, which is possibly going to be quite unusual for people who are listening on the radio. It's a very visual section. It's called Cop Out of This. I can't say it very well. I think people listening will probably be able to say it much better. But actually, no, go on, try it. Cop Out of This. And it actually translates as grab hold of this. So you've brought an object in for us to look at, haven't you?
I have.
Now, we should probably describe this. I mean, we can hold it up for the camera for people watching online, but
I'll describe it.
Yeah.
So what it is a small white pot. I mean, who knew that I would bring some clay? It's a small white pot made by an artist called Elspeth Owen. It is, I'm going to say, 6 centimetres tall by 6 centimetres wide, rounded shape made via a technique called coiling, which lots of people in Stoke will be familiar with. So smooth-sided, however, with a very, very fine edge at the top. And this pot, however, has got lots of sort of dimples and craters around the top edge and lots of sort of cracks where there will be future dimples and craters. That's what it is. Shall I tell you why it is?
Yes, please.
So what it is for the biennial, one of the aspects of the biennial, the headline exhibition is called Award. And that is an open submission. So any UK-based artist, really established practice, can put forward a proposal and a selection panel, an independent selection panel, select 10 of the UK's best contemporary artists working with clay, and we show then those artists make that proposal and we show that work. So this pot is from one of those presentations. So it was a body of work. It was called Beyond Repair by Elspeth Owen. Elspeth is a Cambridge-based ceramicist, so not local. And she won't mind me saying this, but she's in her 80s. And Beyond Repair, I'm going to have to read to you how Elspeth described it because I won't be able to do justice to it. Let me see if I can find it. She describes it as a celebration and a witness to breaking and failing and getting old and wearing out and having one's time, and that time then being past. It was exactly that. What it was this long trail of broken shards, of ceramic shards, because Elspeth was interested in when someone's got a perfect pot and it gets broken for whatever reason, why do people keep the shards? Because it is beyond repair. They should get rid of those. But actually, people, for all sorts of reasons, keep those shards. And she was really interested in why and what happens at the end of a life, whether that's an inanimate object and a pot or whether it's a person. And the reason that I chose this is that I have the privilege in my role that when we choose these 10 artists for award, in the preparing the work and in the 9 months in advance of the biennial, we go and do a studio visit with each of the artists. So we went to Cambridge and went to Elspeth's studio, and it was the most incredible place. And it often is, when you go to an artist's studio, it is like walking inside someone's brain.
Yes.
Because they've just got all their all their inspiration and some newspaper, in Elspeth's case, like newspaper cuttings from the 1970s that she shoved in the corner, and it's still there. And it's an incredible privilege. So it's an incredible privilege to have that. Obviously, not everyone can do that. So then I feel really strongly that my responsibility is about communicating some of that power and some of that experience that comes over when you do those visits through explaining the installations. So Elspeth's installation was this long bed of shards with 150 of these pots that she'd made by hand. They're low fired, so they're not fired to a very high temperature, so they're quite fragile. And she placed them on top and she said, right, you mustn't now touch them. It was outside, this installation. It's like, well, okay, yeah, but the wind's going to blow and they're going to fall over. And she's like, yeah, they are, aren't they? That's going to irritate you because you mustn't touch them. And it's going to rain and they're going to fill with rain. Yes, that's going to irritate you, but you mustn't touch them. So that was the deal. And what Elspeth's idea was that they basically degraded. It was a sort of witness to things degrading and things getting old and things falling apart. And so what she said is, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this, and then I want people to be able to take them with them. So she'd made 150 of them because I want them to then bear witness to the degrading of this object. And she said she didn't think people would want to do that because there's a responsibility in that. And so her idea was that from the exhibition, the biennial launch, people would be able to take them if they wanted to take them. And I said to Elspeth, I was like, no, Elspeth, we can't do that, because it's going to be, the first hour of the launch.
They'll all go.
And they'll all be gone. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I don't think they will, because people won't want the responsibility. And I was like, I think you're wrong. I think they will. And so anyway, we negotiated in the end, because I was like, I'm not running a biennial for 6 weeks where they just see a bed of shards and we try and explain this concept. So we compromised that a week before the end of the biennial would let people do it at that point. I was right. They did all go within the first couple of hours. I'm the owner of one. But that idea of something that you sort of present that is so rich and so deep and so moving, and now, and so simple, but then dispersed goodness knows where. I know where this one is. I don't know where the other 149 of them are now dispersed and hopefully really valued and watched and cared for. I mean, as you well know, I brought this in a wooden box wrapped in cloth. It doesn't normally live like that. It doesn't normally live on display in my house. But that sort of idea, and being able to capture those ideas and present them in Stoke-on-Trent and tell people those stories and get people to think about the things that Elspeth values.
Yes.
And basically bring world-class art, which might be quite difficult for people to really understand if they just walk out and go, there's a load of shards with some pots on top full of rain, to the city. It's such a privilege. So for me, yes, I brought Elspeth's pot, but because it represents that privilege of the role that I have within the city of bringing these artists, bringing these stories to the city and expanding people's view of what clay can mean.
And once again, demonstrating the power that clay has to give an idea, to express emotions. It's kind of poetry, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. And I will remember forever, because when the artists put forward their proposals that go through to the selection committee, they have to put an artist statement in. And Elspeth had explained, her age and how long she'd been practicing, etc. And her proposal finished with, personally, for her, this was an exploration about how to make a tidy end.
Gosh.
I know. Gosh, indeed.
Powerful.
So there were, 5 of us on this panel going, okay, yes, this
something in my eye.
Exactly. I'm not crying. I'm grateful every day that I have that opportunity to do that in the city.
And there are still people here that think that ceramics, pottery is plates and mugs.
Yeah.
And it's not, is it?
No.
It's more than that, isn't it?
And it can be, it can be that. It can be the beautiful, exquisite thing. I love that. But it can be the very other end of that, all about the sort of process and the rawness of taking a material out of the ground. One of the things I quite enjoy is when we put the biennial on, obviously you get lots of people who've worked in the industry who'll come, and they will have a very particular view of making skills. And I quite like it. My favourite happened in 2021, where a guy went in and I was on the reception desk, and he came out and he went, some good, some bad, some ugly, see you next time. And I was like,
okay.
Brilliant. I love the fact that there's some aspects of this that you absolutely didn't like, but in 2 years' time, you're definitely coming back. It's like, that works for me. That's great.
Now, last question. If you could have one wish for the next 100 years of Stoke-on-Trent, it's hard, isn't it? What would it be?
This is the hardest question. Thinking about the centenary and that sort of looking forwards, I decided that to answer this question, you have to look back and maybe look back a bit more than 100 years. The wish for me for the city was that the city could regain more confidence, that confidence that clearly was here in the city in the 1890s and the 1910s. I mean, clearly the war years impacted everywhere, including Stoke-on-Trent. But that confidence in the importance of the skills and the creativity here, I think you said it earlier, it's quite easy for people to dismiss it because they are so familiar with it. And that would be my wish for the city, that we sort of regain a confidence in what is so important about this city, and it's the legacy of making.
I think that's the perfect way to end. Thank you so much for being a guest today. It's been wonderful to have you here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.